Fight for the innocent. One way you can help is with your gift to keep AFA Action on the front lines in the battle for life. When you give, you'll also get free access to the Monica Kelsey story that details her mission to save abandoned newborns across America. Stop by afaaction.net today. afaaction.net.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome, everybody, to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I am joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, sir.
Howdy, Ed.
And Chris Woodward. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And then in Kansas City, Kansas, Dr. Ray Pritchard. Good morning,
Hey,
Ray.
Ed, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Folks, it is Thursday, May 30th. We have 2 days left in the month. And hard to believe that the year is spinning away so quickly. But, Fred, when we kind of consider all the news, all the stuff that's been happening this year, it's no wonder. I mean, this has been a year already, 5 months in, stuffed with things. War in the Middle East. We have the former president of the United States on trial in several different places. I mean, it's been a nutty year.
It has been nonstop, which is why our news team, we hang around on Friday afternoons. I tell the guys, watch out for Friday afternoons.
Yeah.
Because things happen on Friday afternoon.
Now, there's a reason for that. Why?
Yes. Well, because many times it's announcements from governments. They really don't want the national news out there on their announcement because it usually has a negative impact on a group of people. And so they'll wait until 2 or 3 o'clock Eastern time on Friday afternoon and they'll make this announcement. But you're right. I mean, you've got the Trump trial going on. We're in the midst of an election, subset Trump trial on this. We've got all of these weather issues that are going on around the country. And
crime spiraling out of control in a lot of big cities.
Oh, it is absolutely incredible what's going on. And as we often say, Ed, we connected back to spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
So much of it. I mean, what's happening with our kids, the protests on the campuses against Israel. It's just every day. There is not a quiet news day anymore. In fact, when we do our today's issues story meeting, very often we don't have time for that story. We don't have time for this story.
The ones that we do think maybe we can have time for, more than half of them we don't ever get a chance to cover.
No, there's just so much going on. And we'll talk a minute. You know, we've got the Trump trial going on. The jury is deliberating, kind of, and I'll explain that in a minute.
Right.
But a Supreme Court decision this morning, good news for the National Rifle Association. Just so much, it just keeps happening and keeps happening. So stay tuned, folks. We'll get to as much news to you as possible here. And during the run of the day, of course, we have our newscast. We have our website, afn.net. So as they say in the business, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Now, folks, at the bottom of the hour, when we come back from our break, Jan Markell, host of Understanding the Times, will be joining us. We'll be talking to her about some of the things that are going on. And then at 10:45, Dr. Alex McFarland, co-host of Exploring the Word, will be our guest. So we have a couple of stories that we are going to kind of toss their way and get their take on things. And so stay tuned for that coming up after the bottom of the hour. All right, Chris, what do we got?
Well, Fred briefly mentioned the Supreme Court situation there. On our website, afn.net, is the story. Our headline is Supreme Court clears the way for the NRA's free speech lawsuit against an ex-New York official. I'll read a little bit of what Fred posted just a moment ago. The Supreme Court today cleared the way for an NRA lawsuit against a former New York State official over claims she violated its free speech rights. The unanimous opinion, guys, reverses a lower court ruling tossing out the gun rights group's lawsuit against ex-New York State Department of Financial Services Superintendent Maria Vola. The NRA said Maria pressured banks and insurance companies to blacklist it after the school shooting in Parkland, Florida that left 17 people dead in 2018. The NRA, interestingly enough, it's almost unthinkable that you would get a unanimous opinion from the Supreme Court, but the NRA was represented by the American Civil Liberties Union.
Yes.
Cats and dogs are hanging out together, and Upside is down, and Trump and Biden are going to hug. Who
Well,
knows?
hey, Fred, I will mention this. The American Civil Liberties Union used to be one of the go-to groups for protecting free speech rights, no matter who it was. They protected the rights of a Nazi group in Skokie, Illinois, many decades ago, and took a lot of flack for it. But their position was the First Amendment protects even views that we all find abhorrent. Now, part of Chris's surprise is that in recent years, the ACLU has stated we are not obligated to defend views that we don't agree with, which was a change for them. But I'm happy to see that they did stand up for what was right, First Amendment, even if they disagree with the NRA. And the NRA has looks like it's won this case.
Well, the thing is, they can proceed with this free speech case. And what the case is about, in the wake of the Parkland, Florida shooting at the school there, and very tragic, 17 people died, this New York State official encouraged banks not to do business with the NRA anymore.
Right.
I think what the ACLU recognized is that, okay, if we were to say we're okay with this New York State official doing this, governments change with elections.
Yes.
What happens the next time? You get a Republican New York State official in charge of financial department who says, hey, banks, we don't want you doing business with Planned Parenthood anymore.
Right.
Because we take a stand against abortion. So the ACLU has a vested interest many times. Groups in fights they probably, as liberals, don't agree with the NRA.
Right.
But they understand that this state official went way beyond the powers that she should in encouraging banks not to do business with a perfectly legal entity, that being the National Rifle Association.
Ray, to Fred's point here, this is very interesting because this was, as Chris mentioned, from the story. Folks, you can go to afa.net and read this story. Chris, have you posted this also on Facebook?
It is on the Facebook.
So it is a unanimous opinion from the Supreme Court. This, I don't know what the legal wranglings, what legal issues were involved here and what the Supreme Court has said about those. I'm sure this will kind of filter out. This happened today, I think, right? This was a recent ruling. But Ray, here's the thing. There are a lot of times when conservative groups have been pushed out. We've seen conservative groups who've had bank accounts canceled. We, American Family Association, have had a number of run-ins where a credit card processor said, we are not Stripe. They said, we're not going to process your credit card, your donations via credit cards. So this could be a shot across the bow for some of these other companies that are pressured to stop doing business with conservative groups. I'm happy to hear that this is not only a Supreme Court ruling in favor of the NRA's lawsuit, but that it was unanimous.
I think that's the most remarkable thing. On what other decision of importance recently has the Supreme Court been unanimous on anything?
Right.
We're used to 6-3, 5-4, some sort of, or 4-4-1, all sorts of odd splits inside the Supreme Court. But if you can get Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and then Kagan and the others over there, if you can get them to agree on anything, and this isn't, Ed, you're making a really important point. This isn't just some case. This isn't really about the NRA. This is about free speech. This is a First Amendment case,
right.
And the Supreme Court came down in favor of more free speech and in favor of the First Amendment, and I'm surprised, and I think this is something to celebrate.
Yeah, I always go back to, and I keep making reference to this because it's an agenda on the left. I go back to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Canada when the truckers had that protest
Yes.
against the restrictions that were brought in place during the pandemic. And Justin Trudeau said, I'm going to freeze your bank accounts because you have unacceptable views. That's scary stuff.
Right.
That really is scary stuff. And that attitude is very prevalent on the left, that we're going to shut down. You know, when I hear the term, and I keep hearing this term from the left, misinformation. No, it's not misinformation. It's an opinion that disagrees with me. I'm going to classify it as misinformation. And hey, social media companies, we want you to shut that opinion down.
Right.
Because it disagrees with me.
That's tremendous power. You know, the fact that just about every major organization, even nonprofits like AFA, but all these groups, and your argument is your point is well made, Fred. The ACLU might have been acting in its own self-interest here as well, because as you point out, political winds do change. Mm-hmm. You want to hold the line that defends all of our rights, no matter who we are. You want to hold that line, because if you don't, you can get burned. So the power that is wielded by big companies, big banks, mm-hmm. credit card companies,
yes,
internet service providers,
yes.
Okay, what if they all just simply decided, well, we're not going to let conservatives access the internet.
Yes.
We're not going to do business with you. Mm-hmm. That is a tremendous amount of power that could immediately, overnight, push someone outside the mainstream, outside the public square, and put businesses, put groups, put nonprofit groups completely out of business. Yes. When Stripe did that with our credit card processing, mm-hmm. it was virtually overnight.
Yeah.
And we lost a lot of money because it was going into the Christmas season, end of the year, when a lot of people are giving because the tax season is ending. And there are other groups that this has happened to, and it has been tremendously damaging financially. Mm-hmm. I guess we'll wait to see what the reasoning was on the part of the Supreme Court, if this was, if their reasoning, was something that could be applied broadly, or if it's narrowly tailored to this particular case that's going forward. We'll have to wait and see, but this is a good sign.
In other news, the Trump trial resumes today. Another day of jury deliberations began today. They deliberated for about 5 hours yesterday, and deliberations concluded with the panel or jury asking the judge to rehear portions of crucial testimony from two key witnesses, former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker and Michael Cohen, a man that Trump's attorneys have referred to as one of the greatest liars in all of history. So we have this information on our website, afn.net. We also have some reaction here. Our Rusty Pugh has done a great job covering this for us this morning on the radio side of things. Here's one story we had just earlier today. The judge told the jury yesterday they don't have to agree on which alleged crime Trump tried to allegedly cover up, and a number of legal experts have been brought in on Fox to weigh in on this. One of them is former prosecutor Andrew McCarthy. He says it is unheard of to have a judge tell a jury, you don't have to agree on which alleged crime somebody tried to cover up. Clip one.
It's mind-boggling to me that at the end of the rainbow, after they didn't give Trump notice of what the charges were at the indictment stage, after through 6 weeks of trial, we still weren't certain what the menu of crimes, it now turns out, was going to be at the end that he was supposedly covering up or concealing. Now we get here, and it turns out that they don't have to even agree on the main thing. It's astonishing.
Yeah, Ray, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Now, none of us are lawyers here, okay? So we are a little bit at a disadvantage. And folks, if you're saying, well, why don't you bring Abe Hamilton in? Well, he's pretty busy, so we can't bring him in.
If he worked 8 days a week, he'd only be cutting back.
Yeah, that's right. So we can't bring him in every time the rest of us have questions. However, I'm relying on a lifetime of watching Blue Bloods and Law and Order episodes, and it seems to me that what juries are supposed to do, I know there are some variations between municipality and municipality, state and state. But it seems to me that what happens at the end of a trial is the judge asks the jury foreman or foreperson, what say you? And listen, we've all seen this. The foreman says on count 1, guilty. On count 2, not guilty. Meaning that for the guilty verdict, they were unanimous. And they were unanimous on this. Or they decided that he was not guilty of this charge. Apparently what this judge has decided, Judge Juan Merchant, is, listen, if 4 of you jurors agree that he's guilty of this charge and 4 of you agree he's guilty of this, those are unanimous verdicts. Ray, I'm sorry, that seems insane to me, and that comes, like I said, from watching Law and Order.
Well, I too have watched Blue Bloods and Law and Order. I'm not a lawyer. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, right? So, okay, there are cases where there is so much contention. The judge not only says, "Are you unanimous?" but he'll poll the jury.
Yeah.
Juror number 1, juror number 2, juror number 3. You got a case where he would go number 1. So what do you find him guilty of? Number 2, what do you find him guilty of? Number 3, and you get all these different answers. I thought in American justice, the jury had to be unanimous if they were going to find a defendant guilty, unanimous across the board. It's almost as if the judge is saying he's trying to make it easier for them to convict Donald Trump.
Well, now, none of us are lawyers, but Andrew McCarthy, that you just played his take on it, I've seen the same thing with Jonathan Turley. Yep. Actual lawyers are saying that this is highly unusual. And I'm just going to go on the record here, as we all kind of have said. It seems clear to me that the decision about Donald Trump was made before any of this started. This judge is clearly biased, in my opinion. This judge is bending over backwards because what the left wants is a guilty verdict, Fred.
Yep.
That's all they want. The women on The View, that chicken house, hen house, okay? I'm sorry that they don't warrant my respect. They just want to be able to cluck that. I'm probably getting myself in trouble with someone, but they just want to say he's guilty.
Yes.
He's guilty.
Yes.
That's what this was all about when they wanted to get the mugshot. And even if this is overturned, they'll continue to say he was convicted.
And it's not only the women on The View. The White House has made it known that President Joe Biden will have a news conference.
Right.
Once the verdict is in. What the Democrats want, at the very least, they know Trump is doing very well with the American public as a result of this trial, because the American public is seeing what this is a sham trial right from the beginning. I think it's a good idea to remind people to go back to what the state of New York has done. Alvin Bragg is the prosecutor in this case, with the help of his good buddy, Letitia James, who is the Attorney General of the state of New York. What did she say when she was running for office? I am out to get Donald Trump.
Right.
All right. So what this is about is the state of New York claims that the money that Trump paid for the non-disclosure agreement for Stormy Daniels,
or that the Trump campaign paid.
Yes. $130,000. Trump he gave Michael Cohen, his lawyer, liar in chief. We now know Michael Cohen is listed this as a legal expense. It's his lawyer. He asked his lawyer to do this. The state of New York is saying, oh, no, it was a campaign expense. No, it was a legal expense.
Right.
All right. And so they say if they have to find Trump guilty on that charge in order to make the second one hold, which is a conspiracy to influence an election.
Right.
Okay. So they had to find that in order to make it a federal indictment.
Right. A felony.
Yes. All right? So that's where they are. Here's what's really interesting. The jury came back this morning. They want 30 pages of the judge's instructions reread to them, which the legal experts are saying this jury is really confused.
Right.
They're really confused. And they say it's a good sign for the defense because they're trying to figure out what this judge wants.
Right.
How, he's saying certain things about you don't always all of you have to agree on finding guilt in one of these charges. And the 34 indictments really have to do with 34 pieces of paper.
Right.
That's what it's coming down to. This is a sham right from the beginning. I mentioned yesterday I filled in for Walker on at the core. I saw Donald Trump yesterday for the first time talking in a discouraged tone.
Yeah.
He says even Mother Teresa would be found guilty on
right.
the way this is set up. But we have to appreciate what he's been through. Weeks of sitting in a courtroom, testimony. He knows, and I believe the majority of the American people know, that this is a sham trial. It is Democrats trying to silence their political opponent. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, you got judges putting gag orders on the floor. And listen, all that you're talking about that he's gone through this year, that's on top of 8 years of abuse.
Yes.
From the intelligence agencies, abuse of the FISA court, the lies upon lies upon lies, the continual assault on the part of the media. We're talking about The View and some of these kinds of groups. Listen, the guy is a force of nature because ordinary human beings would have collapsed because of the discouragement and the exhaustion a long time ago.
Yes.
But Trump when he's making speeches, he seems to bounce right back. So he's an extraordinary guy who is under extraordinary pressure.
I found something, and I posted this a moment ago on our Today's Issues Facebook page, both on the page and in the comments. Media Research Center has done some analysis of how much time media has spent covering this Trump trial, this particular trial, compared to the bribery trial of liberal New Jersey Democrat Senator Robert Menendez. In just 6 weeks, ABC, CBS, and NBC have doled out more than 10 hours of coverage on the case, and MRC says, no surprise here, a lot of that was one-sided. As compared to the trial of liberal Senator Robert Menendez, again, who's accused of bribery, the tally remains stuck at a piddling 7 minutes and 56 seconds.
Well, I will say, not that I am in any way defending the lamestream media, okay? But Robert Menendez he's not on the same level as the former president. I would be interested in if MRC has compared the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden stuff.
I'm sure they have. I'll look for it during the break.
In terms of how that compares to what they've been.
It's going to be interesting because the Hunter Biden trial on the gun charge is coming up starting Monday. I believe it is Monday. Yes. So that'll be kind of interesting to see what the major networks do with that.
Yeah. All right, folks, we were talking about all kinds of stuff going on. We apologize. We were limited into how much we could get to, at least in this first half hour. I do want to remind you that coming up after this break, Jan Markell will be on, host of Understanding the Times. And then at 10:45, Dr. Alex McFarland, co-host of Exploring the Word. We're going to pitch a couple of stories their way and get their take on what is happening. Do want to encourage you to check out American Family News. That is AFN.net. We're very proud of what AFN.net puts out. You can get, from a Christian perspective, a take on the news, not only in this country, but around the world. All right, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Please rejoin us after the break.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him, and they led him out to crucify him. Calvary was located outside the city walls of Jerusalem. Crucifixions inside the walls were forbidden. So the Romans, who alone could order the death penalty, made sure that crucifixions were executed where the general public could get a good view. This was an effective reminder for any of those Jews who had ideas concerning opposition to Roman authority. We are told that Christ was scourged before he was crucified. Scourging consisted of a lashing with leather thongs, tipped on the end with metal. The prisoner was stripped of his clothing, he was bent over, and he was whipped on the naked flesh on his back. The result was sometimes fatal to the prisoner. Certainly, following his scourging, Jesus was very weak. He was bruised and beaten. His body was bloody. The Romans showed little mercy to prisoners, so Christ was forced to carry the cross on which he was to be crucified to Calvary, the place of the skull. Whether the spot got its name from its appearance resembling a skull or from skulls left from previous crucifixions, we aren't sure. What we are sure of is that Calvary was the place of death. On his way to Calvary, weak from the scourging, Christ fell under the weight of his cross. It was so heavy and he was so weak, he had to have help. Christ was dependent upon his fellow man just as we are. It was Simon the Cyrenian who carried the cross for Christ. Simon eased the load and lightened the burden of the one who had eased the loads and lightened the burdens of so many. Since Cyrene was a city in Libya in northern Africa, there is a good possibility that Simon was a black person. Whether he was or wasn't isn't important. What is important is that he carried the cross of Christ. He helped a brother who needed help. Perhaps one of the two traditional sites we of today call Calvary is the authentic one, or perhaps we will never know where Calvary is physically. Does it matter? Calvary can be anywhere. Calvary can be everywhere. Whenever we die to self and come alive to God and our fellow human beings, there is Calvary. Wherever we lay down our lives and stretch out our selfish hands to our fellow human beings, there will be our Calvary. This Jesus we worship wasn't spared the pain and hurt of life. He was no Buddha, protected from the old, diseased, and miserable. No. Our Christ knew suffering and hurt. He had seen it in the eyes of the mother whose daughter he was requested to heal. He had seen it in the humility of the Roman officer whose slave was sick. He tasted it in the death of Lazarus, and he cried with Mary and Martha in their sorrow. Now, he personally was the sufferer. Pain racked his body. Hurt broke his heart. The crucifixion of Christ did not stop on that Judean hillside 2,000 years ago. Not a day has passed when he has not been crucified again. So many times in so many ways, we drive the spikes of selfishness into his hands. Christ died for me. Those 4 words have changed the lives of countless individuals. Their full impact upon the world will never be realized. And it was at Calvary that Christ died. We must face Calvary too, if we are to live with him.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. Colossians 1:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. And from Kansas City, Kansas, Dr. Ray Pritchard is joining us. Well, we try at least once a month to get Jan Markell on with us. She's host of Understanding the Times, heard Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central Time and Sundays at 12 p.m. Central Time here on American Family Radio. Jan, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, Jan, you have been following and covering a story that we wanted to kind of pitch to you concerning the World Health Organization, WHO. Chris, why don't you update our listeners?
Yeah, for people unfamiliar with this story, we'll back up just a bit. For many months now, most of us in the newsroom have interviewed a lot of people that we would all recognize by name to get their concerns about the World Health Assembly, which is the decision-making body of the World Health Organization, or WHO. It has long been feared and reported that the World Health Assembly was going to be meeting starting in late May through early June to discuss a global pandemic treaty to which the U.S. and other countries may gladly give away national and personal sovereignty to, allowing the WHO to decide how the world should respond to a pandemic should something like COVID-19 ever happen again. Last week, Fred posted some good news on our website, afn.net. The good news is a proposed global treaty to give the WHO more power over how countries respond to pandemics has been put on hold. Roland Dries, co-chair of the WHO's negotiating board for the agreement, acknowledged that countries were unable to come up with a draft. The WHO had hoped that a final draft treaty would be agreed upon ahead of the meetings which began a few days ago. I interviewed former Representative Michelle Bachmann, frequent guest of Jan's show, and Michelle Bachmann told us at AFN that she was glad, she praised God even, and said this is an answer to prayer, that the WHO had not been able to come up with this. But Bachmann did go on to warn that participating countries in the WHO might still try to come up with some language to try to push something like this at this particular meeting. So that's where we thought to bring in Jan. What are you hearing, or what are you concerned about with them still meeting to discuss these kinds of things?
Well, and I think Michelle suggested this either directly or indirectly. This is a delay. In other words, they tried this in 2023. It didn't happen. They've tried it here in 2024, and they will try it again in 2025. And keep in mind that the Biden administration is in favor of this. Donald Trump pulled America out of the World Health Association in 2020 because he could see the potential evil of it all, and now we're back in it. And you know, in a sentence or two, it basically means that health rules would be forced on all nations, including America, under this World Health Organization, if we were to go into this organization, which would mean forced medical procedures, including vaccines. This outfit has the potential of being more powerful than the United Nations. And the head of the WHO is a former terrorist known as Tedros Ghebreyesus, literally the last person on earth you want in charge of a lemonade stand, let alone the potentially most powerful organization on the face of the earth. So again, we fled this in 2020 for good reason. We went right back in it. And again, I think this partly points to the importance of the November election so that we can stay out of these organizations that are globalist outfits trying to unite the world as one. But in this case, every listener's health and health status would be subject to the World Health Organization, to a globalist outfit that is, quite frankly, if I can be blunt, just plain evil.
Jan, you've made clear, and thank you for making this clear to our listeners, that this isn't the WHO simply making recommendations to countries.
Right.
This is the WHO ordering countries that have voluntarily submitted themselves to the WHO, ordering them to do its bidding if we have another pandemic. So let me ask you this.
Right.
Why? Why does the WHO want to do this? I'm sure they would couch it and say, well, we all need to be on the same page, so on and so forth. But there really does seem to be some spiritual and some sinister motivations. Do you think it is going too far to say that this is part of the globalist mentality of eventually eliminating the sovereignty of nation states and subjecting it to a one-world government?
Yeah, well, you just summed it up in a paragraph beautifully. This is an effort at world government, and I don't think anyone ever thought, including myself, I don't think we ever thought that the potential vehicle to form global government would be a health organization, the World Health Organization. But gentlemen, think back to 2020, 2021, when the whole world was thrown into mild, in some cases, major form of chaos because of a pandemic. Now, we keep being told another one is coming. Is it going to be bird flu? I don't know. It's going to be something. And they're all saying that what's coming, disease X, whatever they want to call it, is going to be 20 times worse than COVID. 20 times. How do they know it's going to be 20 times worse? I mean, do they have some kind of foreknowledge? So that's what they're saying, to scare everybody and get the mindset to say, well, we better listen to the World Health Organization or we're going to all die. And then as the bottom line, as you just said, Fred, is that this is an effort at forming a one-world government. I think we all thought it would be the United Nations, maybe the World Economic Forum, never the WHO. I mean, I personally am shocked at all of this.
It's really interesting, Jan, that they're now trying to, in the days since, when was it, last Monday, when they had announced this delay, they're now trying to roll in climate change into this argument, that climate change is a threat to our health, and that, if they can't get the pandemic, let's throw climate change into the soup here, because they're saying, of course, we're looking at the weather in the United States over the last couple of weeks. Oh, we're going to have more of this. We're going to have more hurricanes. And it's all about climate change. So we better kind of roll this into the supposed threat that we need the WHO dictating policy to the world.
Exactly right. And again, and you're right. When we look at some of the catastrophes that have been going on weather-wise, who wouldn't want, well, let's just say these things to sort of settle down. But this whole climate change, whatever you want to call it, they used to call it global warming, and then that was not effective. They moved it to climate change. And honestly, I'm not a believer, but honestly, those of us in Minnesota wish there could be some climate change. We would be all for it. We would be all for it. But it's all fiction. It's just all phony. So, weather has changed for decades, even centuries, probably millennia. There's no such thing as some sort of man-made climate change other than what the man-made, that God made, because he's chosen to change the weather, so we change the seasons and we can grow and then we harvest. So, I'm kind of out of words, gentlemen, because this whole thing, we all thought the UN, WEF, no one thought World Health. Take that a step further. Who can imagine the likes of a Tedros Ghebreyesus as the head of the world, a former terrorist from Somalia?
It's amazing. For those who, we talk about climate change. I was reading Genesis 8 the other day. God's promise made to Noah after the flood, the rainbow. Yes. And what are those last few verses in Genesis 8? God says, as long as time exists, there's going to be seasons.
Right.
There's going to be cold times. There's going to be warm times. Hey, I'll go with the promise of God any day.
Yes.
Over these alleged climate change, Al Gore and the rest of them.
Yeah, I think maybe the NIV says there that as long as the world exists, Minneapolis is going to be frozen in the winter. That's
right.
That's just,
Thanks.
Sorry, Jan. Sorry, Jan.
You made my day. You made my day.
Hey, Jan, thank you so much for being on with us. Let our listeners know if you've already got something coming up, you already got something planned for this weekend. Let them know what it is.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to take a look at just what does the fullness of the Gentiles mean. It's a last days phrase in the Bible, and it has deep, deep meaning, and we can apply it to our day today, and I think your listeners will really be fascinated by what that means in the Bible. We'll look at it in some related issues for the whole hour this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate
Thank you.
you being on with us today.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye now.
Absolutely. That's Jan Markell, host of Understanding the Times, heard Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central Time and Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Time here on American Family Radio. So check that out this weekend. Saturday at 1, Sunday at 12 p.m. They'll be talking about the fullness of the Gentiles, a phrase that appears, I don't remember if that's in Luke 21 or maybe Romans 11. I'm not sure where that is in one of those.
We do have a guy who could probably tell us.
Hey, Ray.
Romans 11.
Romans 11. Okay.
Until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's we needed the Bible scholar we needed to bring him back in anyway. So, all right, listen, folks. You thought Jan Markell was great? Well, we have Alex McFarland, Dr. Alex McFarland, on the line, co-host of Exploring the Word, heard weekdays at 3 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio. Good morning to you, Alex.
Good morning, everybody. How are we doing?
We're doing great. And, I was just thinking as I was introducing Alex, I was thinking, we got great talk shows on American Family Radio, but we also have great Bible programs, including Jan's on the weekends, Dr. Alex McFarland with Bert Harper on weekdays. So that's a wonderful thing. Jeff Shreve. Yeah, we have some great Bible programs on American Family Radio because this is first and foremost a Christian ministry.
Amen.
All right, Chris. Go ahead and set up our story, the one we wanted to at least initiate with Alex, and then we can go from there.
Right. One of the most talked about universities this year has been Harvard, and for understandable reasons. Their president, then President Claudine Gay, got in hot water because she wouldn't do enough to denounce anti-Semitism. She was brought before federal legislators, namely Republicans, to answer questions for those kinds of things. She has since resigned due to unrelated plagiarism issues, although she's still at Harvard and getting paid a lot of money to work there. The reason I bring in Harvard is because there is a story today on DC Examiner, Washington Examiner, and their headline is this: Harvard has decided to no longer issue statements on current events that do not affect the institution. For a long while now, Harvard has decided to weigh in on things that have absolutely nothing to do with the degree programs or the campus lifestyles and whatnot on Harvard's campuses. So empathetic statements such as the ones issued following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 will no longer be issued by Harvard. Some Jewish students are still very upset by this. They're saying there's still a blatant anti-Jewish double standard at Harvard. But we thought to bring in Alex to talk about this because one of the many things Alex does besides appear on this program is he appears on college campuses there. So what do you think of the idea of Harvard to say, you know what, we're not going to weigh in on things that don't have anything to do with our school anymore?
Well, the word university is a misnomer. It should be a monoversity. University means a plurality of knowledge, but what woke academia, and whether it be, Harvard and Stanford and the Ivy League, they have their list of, quote, harmful language, that words that are now contraband. Folks, here's the irony. Liberalism, which prides itself on being open and tolerant and diverse, Harvard and the woke world, they engage in thought control, opinion suppression, censorship. It's really a type of fascism. And let me say this, guys, that what they're saying is the fact that they will not comment or take a position on matters outside of their little ivory tower bubble. What they're saying is that they're not relevant and no one should go there. Now, the bigger, larger problem is an anti-American, anti-Western civilization bent that ivory tower liberal academia has been on for a quarter century or more. But rather than do the right thing, the moral thing, the truthful thing, and categorically condemn terrorism, categorically stand with Israel, a nation of human rights and democracy in the Middle East, rather than actually take a position for truth, Harvard is saying, look, we just will be silent. The sooner the universities like this go out of business, the better for the world and certainly for America.
Alex, let me just kind of spring off that last comment. Now, you do travel around to college and university campuses,
Yes.
both the secular variety, private, state colleges, but you also go to Christian colleges. What do you think the next decade holds for that approach to higher learning? Do you think it's going to survive? And I guess I'm asking this question even outside the current controversies regarding the anti-Americanism, the things you discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this approach to higher learning is going to survive? Do you think it will be adjusted somehow and change? What's your take on the future of college and university campuses?
You know, U.S. News and World Report puts out an annual education issue, and it was about 2019, so it was about 5 years ago, that the U.S. News and World Report, in their annual education issue, they predicted that half of America's 5,500 brick and mortar colleges will close in the next 20 to 30 years. There are a lot of reasons. For one, online learning, and Liberty University was a pioneer in this. But online learning has been a game changer, and COVID, of course, just accelerated the degree to which people are engaged in distance learning. But, you know, the 5,500 colleges in America, the vast majority are at best tepid, and they play it safe. They really they have tenure. They hire professors based on quotas. They're if not overtly woke, they're not overtly constitutional and conservative, and they're burning through their endowments with deferred maintenance and putting roofs on dormitories that kids aren't staying in. See, a lot of people don't realize one of the main revenue streams for universities is room and board. So as kids are not living on campus, they're doing distance learning, a lucrative revenue stream of housing is not there always like it has been. So U.S. News and World Report predicted that half of the brick and mortar colleges are going to close in the next 30 years. That may or may not happen, but I do think many will close. But let me say this. There's a university that I've taught for called Caris in Woodland Park, Colorado. It's a Christian college. They've got 5-degree programs now. Look, they're going for it. They're going for full accreditation eventually. They're going to start a law school. Of course, Liberty has been very strong. There are other, great schools like, Christian schools, Palm Beach, Atlantic, I think of, Hillsdale College, oh my goodness, Patrick Henry College in Virginia. Guys, I think that the dying corpse of wokeism is just, the die is cast, and I think, as has been the case in the Middle Ages, in colonial America, Christians will fill in the gap created by the death of the schools that go woke and make themselves irrelevant.
Alex, you've opened the door for my challenge that I've been making for several years now. You know, that God blesses Christians with money. but he also holds us responsible for how we spend the money. And it's been a beef of mine for a long time that, Christians, mom and dads will spend $100,000 to send their kids to a secular school where their minds will be polluted.
Right.
And where they're taught things 180 degrees to what the values of mom and dad are and the values of the church that this young person has attended. I'm an advocate for at least encouraging our kids to spend at least 1 year at a Bible school to get really grounded. They may be called, God may be calling them into medicine, law, whatever the case may be. But even, there are Christian schools with law schools now. But I just think we have to really start stressing the idea that we are accountable for the financial blessings God gives us. And I don't think God is pleased with spending $100,000 of that to get a degree from a university that is very anti-Christian.
That hates God.
That hates God.
Exactly. And is going to teach, egalitarianism and gay marriage and LGBTQ trans. Let me say to the moms and dads out there who I love and appreciate, many a parent in the spirit of legacy, I want my son or daughter to go to my alma mater. By the way, alma mater is a contraband word now. That's Latin for the mother who birthed me. And since we don't believe in mothers or women or... I'm serious.
People who give birth.
Yes, pregnant people.
Yes.
But here's the thing. Mom and Dad, I would think the most keen stewardship issue with which you're ever entrusted is the life and the souls of your children. And one father, a man that sent his son to NC State University, and his son came back from a dynamic Christian young man to a gay agnostic. And this father wept. I stood in a church vestibule. He said, I paid NC State 4 years and $120,000 to disconvert my son. Here's the thing, moms and dads. Like Martin Luther said, never place your children in an institution of learning where the scriptures do not reign paramount. And it's not only biblical worldview, as important as that is. We're talking about a Judeo-Christian constitutional representative America. And by the way, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. That's another subject for another day. But guys, part of the reason the very future of our nation hangs in the balance is because of woke universities that are socialistic, globalistic, and generations of Christian families have sent their children there to be programmed. And I guess my little corner of the world, we're working to woke-proof middle school and teenagers and deprogram mixed up adults.
Right. Well, and that point you're making here, it's not a throwaway line. The fact of the matter is, this woke garbage is now all the way down in grammar school. So it used to be college campuses, and you had to prepare your kids for what they would experience on the college campus. Now parents are finding they have to go to battle for their kids, even in many of the public schools of our nation, because all of that has drifted downwards.
That's why I really urge parents to consider Christian school or homeschooling, or at least private classical education. But the public schools, don't be surprised after 12 years of that your kids become Marxist agnostics, because that's the ideology in America's public schools.
Dr. Alex McFarland has been our guest, co-host of Exploring the Word with Brother Bert Harper, heard weekdays at 3 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today.
God bless you all. God bless America.
Amen. All right, folks, we are going to take a 5-minute break for news. And when we come back, Steve Paisley-Jordahl will be in the house. Fred and I and Dr. Ray Pritchard will be back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You're aware of how important it is to stay engaged in America's culture war. One way American Family Association helps you to do that is through action alerts. Here's how it works. Once or twice a week, we'll email you about matters critical to America's families, and we'll offer ways to take action. Visit afa.net today and tap the Action Alert sign-up button.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Supreme Court has ruled unanimously in favor of the NRA in a First Amendment case. Fox News chief legal correspondent Shannon Bream at the U.S. Supreme Court.
So essentially what the NRA had said is there's an official here in New York they say was actually putting the thumb on the scale against them, going to financial institutions or other regulated bodies and essentially saying don't do business with the NRA in a way to kind of hobble them and keep them from being able to go forward. So what the court did is they said the Second Circuit got this wrong. It's a win for the NRA in that the case gets to continue. They actually get to pursue their First Amendment rights in this case. So essentially a win for the NRA today, but that case is far from over. But if a government official gets involved with trying to pressure regulated entities to stop doing business with a legal entity, here the case apparently 9-0. Yes, there are unanimous opinions at the Supreme Court. They're sending it back down to say the NRA's got a case here.
It's day 2 of jury deliberations in the New York hush money trial against former President Donald Trump. Eric Shawn reports.
Judge Juan Merchan finished reading the jury instructions back to the jury, the portion of the jury instructions that he read to them yesterday. Well, they wanted it read back. One section that deals with inconsistencies of witnesses and what to do if witnesses lie. So they may be considering Michael Cohen and how to handle his testimony as part of that under the law. Of course, this all comes as they are also asking for other testimony to try and find out exactly what did Donald Trump do. They will also hear testimony that they asked for about a meeting that Trump had with the National Enquirer publisher David Pecker and longtime Trump pal and lawyer Michael Cohen.
Jury selection for the federal firearm trial against President Biden's son Hunter is set to begin next week. Jackie Heinrich has more from the White House.
Today is the 9th anniversary of Beau Biden's death, and this morning the president and his family went to the church where he is buried to pay their respects. It follows a visit that the president made to Beau's widow, who is also Hunter's ex-girlfriend, and she's expected to testify in his trial next week. The trial is expected to publicize some unsavory and embarrassing details that the famously private First Family would prefer not to dwell on. Court filings revealed prosecutors' plans to go over money Hunter allegedly spent on various women, pictures and videos of Hunter smoking crack cocaine, text messages between family members, and tax documents from London Roberts, a woman who Hunter initially denied fathering a child with.
It's not uncommon these days to hear of consumers, legislators, and even attorneys general pushing back on woke corporations, ESG, and DEI. Paul Fitzpatrick of 1792 Exchange says it's encouraging to see people wake up to these issues.
And to be clear, we want American corporations to be very profitable, but we want them to focus on producing good products and services, not on agendas.
A Florida college professor was investigated for accusing a black student of plagiarism.
Professor William Asher of Claremont McKenna College went through a year-long investigation because of racism allegations potentially lodged by another professor, according to the College Fix. He's now been ultimately cleared. Matt Lamb is associate editor for the College Fix. Lamb explained that according to the accusation at least, a diversity, equity, and inclusion administrator stepped into the investigation of the plagiarism and raised concerns about it because it was a black student being investigated.
And it appears the student did plagiarize. Not only did the paper fail a Turnitin test, which checks for plagiarism, but a professor that the college appointed to look into this found even worse plagiarism than the software found. And then this professor now finds himself under investigation for racism, but he pointed out that he has actually turned in a white student before for plagiarism.
Which is something that Lamb says people should pay attention to.
That should be concerning to supporters of racial equality because it would appear, or at least the result of the administrator's action would be to say that black students should be held to a lower standard. All students, no matter their race, should be held to the same standard, and that is why there are honor codes, student conduct codes that describe how allegations can be handled.
The College Fix quoted one professor as saying in short that professors are already debased and frightened, and this adds yet another instrument against them. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We stand on the biblical truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are endowed by Him with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back, folks. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us, although you kind of got the garden shirt on.
It's my Madagascar shirt.
Your Madagascar shirt.
Yep.
All right. Hey, also joining us from Kansas City, Kansas is Dr. Ray Pritchard. Hey, Ray, tell our listeners a little bit about Keep Believing.
Well, we have been in existence for 18 years, and our name is our mission. We want to help people believe in Jesus and then find the strength and encouragement to keep believing in Him. And I'll tell you one thing I've discovered is that over the years, it's one thing to come to Christ. It's another thing to stay the course and stay strong and to keep believing. And I had one great friend, an old man who'd fought in World War II, fought under General George Patton. And, we were talking one day, and I said, "Do you ever struggle?" He said, "If I ever do struggle, I just stand up straight. I think of what God has called me to do, and I just take the next step forward." And I think, well, that's exactly right. When you don't know what else to do, just stand up straight, look ahead, take the next step, and put everything else in the hands of Almighty God. Well, our ministry exists to help people take their next step with Jesus. So, anyway, come see us at keepbelieving.com. There's a lot of stuff on our website. It's chock full, and it's free. So come and watch it, listen to it, download it, use it any way you like. We're at keepbelieving.com. Love to have you come check us out.
I thought you were going to say that this elderly gentleman who had served in World War II, if he doubts or he gets discouraged, he stands up straight and he thinks to himself, "At least I'm not in the Third Army under old blood and guts." Because he drove his Patton.
Yes, he did.
His army pretty hard.
And my friend had some stories about that. But I think it was from Patton that he learned that. When in doubt, stand up straight, look ahead, take the next step, do what you got to do, and leave the results with the Lord.
All right. Sounds good to me. All right, Steve, get us started.
I wasn't going to start with this, but I just saw this. I know you'd be very fascinated with this, as I was. Let's talk a little bit AI, okay? So
yeah, okay.
Right now, the
artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. The hockey playoffs are going on, as you know.
Yes, and as Fred knows.
And
go Oilers.
Go Oilers.
Who are the Dallas Stars playing right now?
Edmonton Oilers.
Oilers.
Shame on you.
Well, okay, listen to this. So they're in Edmonton.
Yes, they were last night.
But back at home, on home ice, they decided to show the game on the big screen.
Yeah.
And they did something on the ice with lights, and they actually showed the players on the ice, and you could see the players and the puck and everything as you're standing there. And you can see the game is going on, and as it's going on, you see on the ice circles with numbers, and you see the actual game happening.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
You probably can. Wow. So now, what's AI got to do with this? AI was doing this?
That's the way that they're able to tell the numbers and have the lights and the graphics on the actual ice itself.
So the game was in Edmonton last night.
Game was in Edmonton last night.
So they're taking the information, the live information from the game in Edmonton, and they're superimposing it in circles on the ice in Dallas.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is very bad radio, by the way.
Well,
okay. So, all right. So let me. What I'm looking at, folks, for those of you who are going, first of all, I don't understand what you're saying, and second of all, I don't care. Okay, but this is pretty interesting. I thought that was just some animation. That is, the game was in Edmonton.
Right.
AI kept track of the players in Edmonton, and there are people in Dallas at the arena.
Dallas arena.
Yes.
And they see the circles with the players'
and the
numbers and where the puck is going, so they can keep track of the game that way.
It's like you're watching the game, except you can't see the players; you just see circles. But I mean, isn't that cool?
That is very, very interesting.
All right, now that we've totally bored. All right, everybody, you can turn your radios back on.
All right, that is interesting for those who like hockey, but who are also interested in AI. By the way, let me just also, I'm not sure, Steve, if you were the one who sent this. So this might have been my son, Tony. We were talking to Alex McFarland before the break about the possible future of colleges and universities. It was my son. He brought his phone into my office a week or so ago and showed me an AI interaction with two students. All right. This is artificial intelligence teaching math. Okay. So no human teacher. And the interaction of this AI, the voice was perfect. It sounded happy. The AI, quote unquote, teacher was interacting with the student, encouraging them. Okay, well, what is the next step? It was responding to the answers of the student, and it was moving the student towards getting the right answer. Let me tell you something. I usually keep up with some of this AI stuff. I was blown away.
Yeah.
This was posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, and the person typed in above this video that they were showing, say goodbye to teaching jobs. I'm just telling you, it was amazing and maybe a little frightening.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it was a perfect interaction like you'd expect from an actual teacher.
Well, and that was a very positive experience for those students.
Yes.
Very positive. But, some of the human brains behind these logarithms and all of these sorts of things could just as easy start to insert into a mathematics class.
Yes.
Something very devious.
Right.
That's the scary part.
That is. That's the scary part of this, as well as all these. I don't think a human interaction will disappear because people like to have human beings. But anyway, you mentioned AI. You brought it up, Steve. It's your fault.
I do have a question for Ray. How long are we going to have to say X, formerly Twitter? Before we just start calling it X.
Well, Twitter's so much better than X. It seems to me.
Don't tell you on that.
I know. But I mean, when I say it, I don't say X, formerly known as Twitter. I just say Twitter, right? I just say people. You're supposed to know this stuff, right?
I'm not going to submit.
I'm not going
to submit. All right, go ahead with your story.
All right, let's start here. Equity. We've been talking about all the diversity, equity.
It's good if it's in your house. It's bad if it's in government
or in
corporations or in your hospitals.
Or in your hospitals, we're going to find out. So the Biden administration has unveiled a plan that would push American hospitals to prioritize low-income patients and minority patients, patients of color, when performing kidney transplants. So the government has a points system that it gives. If a hospital does a successful kidney transplant, it gets 1 point. If it does a successful kidney transplant on a minority or a low-income person, it gets 1.2 points. So that's how it gets paid. But listen to this. At the end of each year, those points are applied to a transplant quota. Hospitals that meet their quota receive as much as $8,000 per transplant. Those that don't may have to pay up to $2,000 per transplant.
All right, Ray. Listen,
I'm surprised this isn't happening already.
Well,
right?
I'm surprised that that's considered legal. I would have to imagine at some point someone who's on a list for a transplant who keeps getting passed over, like I've been on the list since last year, and now you have people added to the list who are leapfrogging me and getting a kidney transplant. I don't see how that's equal protection under the law and not
That's a huge
discrimination.
lawsuit.
Yes, I would think so.
We have already heard our president say that he really doesn't care about
Well,
the
that
legality
is
of things.
true.
So
That's true. The Supreme Court has made rulings about forgiving the college debt, tuition debt of students. It's not really forgiving. That's the word they use, but it's transferring the debt to the taxpayer. But yeah, and the president has said, well, the Supreme Court said I couldn't do it, but I'm doing it anyway.
And by the way, you know who's getting these loans paid off? These college students. I want to give you an example. This is from New York University. These are just someone put a microphone in the face of graduates. They're all standing there in their graduation robes. And they said, what's your major? What's your major? Listen to some of these majors, and these are the people that you are bailing out with your tax dollars. Cut 10.
My name is Jacob, and my concentration is environmental science and sustainable business.
Hi, my name is Lex, and my concentration is the performance of self.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. My concentration is creative direction, production, and narrative through the arts, performance, and written word.
Hi, my name is Karina Gomez, and my concentration is in journalism and Latin American studies, with an emphasis in human rights, collective memory, and political violence.
Fred, that last one, collective memory. That's kind of like what my wife and I try to do. We tried to join together and remember things. That was bizarre. First of all, I've never heard majors called concentrations. Now, I've been out of college. I graduated in 1982 from Bible College. That's new, but things change in 40 years. I certainly don't mind that, but these kinds of majors. Hopefully, there's some STEM majors in amongst the graduates, because we really need the sciences and the maths and engineering to be represented in our college graduating classes each year, because we got to keep up at least with the Chinese, and Europe. But that's kind of a strange group of majors.
What you're starting to see manifested, and these kids, if you ask them, isn't that strange? They would say, no, it's not strange.
Right.
You're starting to see Marxism, socialism, integrated with what we used to call discipline.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here. That journalism, she said, human rights, collective, and then something else. What was the last thing?
Collective memory. I couldn't.
Justice.
Go ahead and play
political violence.
There you go.
Political violence.
All right.
Good.
So there you see this indoctrination of Marxism into everything. Just going back for a second to that the kidney transplant, that's affirmative action on steroids. That's what you're starting to see into public policy. That's affirmative action in a life and death situation, folks. That's what we're talking.
Yeah.
We have a dear friend back in Vancouver who is now awaiting his second kidney transplant. And, they're starting to measure urgency differently than from physical urgency. They're starting to measure it according to age. This is the next thing, folks.
Yes, you're right.
If you're over 65, I'm starting to get very concerned, because you're being considered a liability.
Right.
We're starting to see that more and more. And yes, there may be lawsuits about this, but courts are being trained in a different way today to look at the law differently. And now you have a government that simply ignores Supreme Court decisions.
Yeah.
When it comes to, we're going to give these kids the money, and the money is always going to be tied to what you are teaching these kids.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to see more and more.
Someone's got to explain to me what the performance of self is. That was the second major.
Listen, I have no idea. Ray, you're an expert
on this. Are you saying that was a major?
Yeah.
Somebody majored in the performance.
The second person in said that concentration was performance of self.
What happened to, I majored in history. We understand that.
Or economics. Or
economics.
Well,
I majored in math.
Fred has a good point. There may be history and math majors, whatever, but it's all being mixed together with all this woke garbage, and they give it names that, that's performance of self.
Is performance of self, is that woke garbage, or is that more new age nonsense that you paid.
I don't know what it means.
$100,000 to get there.
You paid $100,000.
Thank you.
Ray.
Okay,
Performance.
Thank you.
Performance and stuff. That is bizarre. And I got to be honest. Sometimes I just don't even know what to say. It's like trying to make a serious comment about a Bugs Bunny cartoon. No offense to Bugs Bunny cartoons.
It's almost as if this story proves the point that Alex was talking about in the last hour. This is what your public universities have come to, friends.
Yeah.
Why are you spending your money there? Or why are we letting them spend our money there?
All right, that's a good story. That's Bizarro World. So, all right, next.
Let's catch up with what's going on in Gaza. Israel, the military there is talking about how the war is going, and it's talking numbers, how many Hamas fighters it has killed and how many have yet to be eliminated. Before the war, according to a spokesperson for the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, Hamas had around 30,000 or so terrorists, active members of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Well, they've got half of them. They're down to 15,000, which to my mind is not good news because that means they're only halfway done. That's a lot of fighting left to do. And now I'm assuming the first 15,000 was the low-hanging fruit, the people that didn't know how to hide behind a kid.
Right. Well, listen, Fred, this I take note of Steve's point here. 15,000 remaining. Now, I don't know if they're all in Rafah, where the fighting is now.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can't get all of them or nearly all of them, I'm afraid Israel's going to have to do this again in 5 years.
Well, and that is why Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, his military people, by the way, in the last 24 hours said they've got another at least 7 months that they're estimating that it's going to take. But that's why Netanyahu has already said, and they're looking down the road to when the official military action stops. The story doesn't end there. What do you do the next day? And what they're talking about, they can never, never, never allow Gaza to go back to self-government.
Right.
Because we know what happened. 2005, Israel turns Gaza over to the Palestinians. 2007, they elect Hamas.
Right.
For what election means there. And so that is why, the world is pressuring Israel, that you have to allow them to recover from this and have elections and all that. Israel is saying, no, we'll just have a repeat of this again. Israel is saying it has to pretty well set up what it has set up in the West Bank. It has to monitor everything there.
Right.
And send in the military when the military is needed. To that point, the other news that broke with regards to Israel in the last 24 hours is they've taken over a fairly good chunk of the, roughly 16-mile border with Egypt, Gaza and Egypt, that southern border. And to no one's surprise, they have discovered dozens of tunnels coming in from Egypt. And Egypt apparently is upset that now Israel controls. Well, I'm sorry, Egypt. You didn't stop the tunnels from being built.
And somebody somewhere in Egypt knew.
Oh, of course so. Of course so. But these are the tunnels that Hamas has used to keep resupplying Hamas with arms.
Right.
So good for Israel. They have to do all of this. We need to continue to pray for Hamas, for the war against Hamas, Israel. The world is turning against Israel. You have these 3 European nations that were endorsing a Palestinian state. Really? Tell me what that Palestinian state looks like.
Right.
Really? Tell me what it looks like. Because it's not just Gaza. It's also the West Bank. Islamic terrorists are control there. They're in control. Israel's had to deal with that. You don't hear many stories on that. But Israel's also dealing with terrorism in the West Bank.
And they have terrorists, Hezbollah, in Lebanon.
In Lebanon. Netanyahu says, we live in a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
The understatement of the world.
Right.
No kidding. I want to introduce you to a guy named Corey Harris who's having a very bad day. Corey Harris had a court date, and the judge was kind enough to allow him to appear by Zoom because he had a couple things he had to do that day. His charge was driving on a suspended license. He had been driving without a license, and so as he is, I'm going to let you hear the Zoom call. The judge, his name is Cedric Simpson. This is in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And there's a woman's name who's the man's attorney.
The man's attorney. I don't know if I have her name.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah,
all right.
but
That's all right.
Anyway, so this is Corey Harris having a pretty bad day. You'll pick up what's going on here in just a second. Oh, I got to give you a number, don't I? This would be
Public Defender Natalie Tate for Mr. Harris, who should be present in Zoom.
Mr. Harris, are you driving?
Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
You stationary?
I'm pulling in right now at this second. Yes, I am.
All right. What are we doing?
Your Honor, we are respectfully requesting an adjournment in this matter, up possibly 2 to 4 weeks if the court would allow.
Okay. So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving and he didn't have a license. I'm looking at his record. He doesn't have a license. He's suspended and he's just driving.
That is correct, Your Honor.
I don't even know why he would do that. So defendant's bond is revoked in this matter. Defendant is to turn himself into the Washington County Jail by 6 p.m. today. Failure to turn himself in will result in a bench warrant with no bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Harris, I'll be giving you a call.
I bet she will.
Give you a call. You old Domkopf. So this man who is driving on a suspended license is on a Zoom call in for his court, I guess, date with the judge, before the judge.
Right.
His attorney is in the courtroom, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Fred, sounded like he was trying to pull over to a doctor's appointment because he thought the judge would be mad that he was driving on a Zoom call, like texting while driving. Because I'm pulling in, Your Honor, and then the judge.
Okay, I'm set. Here
Wait
we
a
are.
second. Why are you driving? And listen, that was part of the. They used to have the Darwin Awards,
right?
This kind of the
legal
same
version
thing.
of the Darwin Awards.
Legal version of the.
If you can get the video of this, can we do a link on our Facebook page? Because the look on the judge's face is precious. It's like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yes.
Brenda's put it up there. It's on the
Okay, it's up there. I'll tell you.
I feel sorry for the lawyer for the guy, too.
Ray, that was the other thing.
Right.
Now, I don't think they ever showed the lawyer, but you can kind of hear in her voice the exasperation.
But the last thing she says is, I'm going to give you a call.
Yes, I'm going to give you a call.
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
The definition of a very bad day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but also the look on the defendant's face also.
He just hit him all of a sudden.
It hit him all of a sudden. I'm talking to the judge, and I am doing what I don't have a license to do.
Okay, do we have time for this last thing?
No.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
Nope. We got 20 seconds left.
All right.
We'll bring it back to Monday.
On Monday, because this is very funny. Sorry, folks. You're just going to have to wait for this on Monday. Don't forget that.
I won't forget
Tim will
it.
be back in.
Tim will be back.
He'll like this as well. So, all right, folks. That is all the time we have for today's issues today. Now, up tomorrow is Trivia Friday. And directly ahead on American Family Radio, more great programming, more things, preaching programs, Bible-centered programs, and talk shows here on the American Family Radio Network. Ray, thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
And our thanks also, Fred, thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve Jordahl.
My
Steve
pleasure.
Paisley Jordahl, thank you. Our thanks also to Jan Markell, host of Understanding the Times. Check out her program on the Fullness of the Gentiles coming up this weekend, Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Time. And also our thanks to Dr. Alex McFarland. You'll be able to hear him and Brother Bert Harper on Exploring the Word today at 3 p.m. Folks, thanks for joining us. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.
We live in a day when America's families are under attack like never before.
Buddy Smith, Senior Vice President of the American Family Association.
The war against biblical principles rages on numerous fronts. The internet,